you guys are probably like super busy. So I thank you for taking some time out to
No
talk.
problem.
We are somewhat busy, but not super busy, like pre-pandemic and pre-strike. So, and happy to, do anything for this show because we loved working on it, obviously. So,
I thought it was great. I mean, first of all, Carol Burnett, I mean, come on. I mean, when I saw her name, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna watch it. How did she get involved in this?
well, we had that role and we started making lists, as we do. And I had put her on a list and everybody got excited about it. And then Apple was like, yeah, she's, pretty old. Is she fragile or is she still healthy? And she's like, woman's doing a 6-city, one-woman show tour. So I think she's probably okay.
Right.
And what she had said is she was, when she saw the cast, which was at that point just the three ladies, Laura Dern and Kristen Wiig, who came with the show. Well, Laura did because she optioned the book, and then would cast Allison at that point. And she said, "Yes, I want to work with these ladies." So that's kind of how we got her. And then she met with Tate, and they fell in love. So
The cast is like one big ball of greatness. I mean, uh, did you guys basically shoot for the moon and get it, sort of casting wise?
we did. We went over a lot of different options because Abe, Sylvia, and Tate had their own ideas, of course, and then Apple had their own ideas as well. And so we just started that process. And most of the people either met or read. As I said, Laura and Kristen came with it when we first got attached to it. And so and they kind of Abe changed some of the stuff with Ricky Martin's character. Originally, he was supposed to be a Vietnam vet, and because of his age, he became a was it Korean War?
Korean, yeah.
Yeah. So that changed. But I mean, it's not based on anything except their own imaginations and the book that they kind of used as a blueprint, but not because the book's set in Palm Springs. But so they kind of were able to create anything that they wanted to, which was fun. And I think Tate met with Ricky for about an hour and a half once we were interested in, talking to him about it. And because basically, I mean, he'd done Evita on Broadway, and the only television he'd really done was that Versace thing.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right, I
And
forgot
I,
about that.
yeah,
yeah, I thought he was good in that too.
yeah. And then everybody else read. Yeah. So
Old-fashioned way.
yeah, the old-fashioned way of getting a job. And some people read for different roles and were cast in something else. Paul Sand, I don't know if you've gotten to his episodes yet, had read for the role that we ended up, well, Bruce Dern did not read, obviously, being Laura's father in real life as well. But
Being Bruce Dern.
so there were, yeah, and being Bruce Dern, but there were, there was a question as to whether he was going to do it or not. And so we started reading, actors in that age range. And Paul read for that and then was kind enough to move to another role, which is a fun role because he's Carol Burnett's former boyfriend, ultimately, in his storyline. So, and ends up being Dinah's love interest. So,
I'm an actor too, and it's always a thrill. Like it's happened to me before, like where you're reading for one thing, and hey, can you maybe try this one? And then it just automatically clicks. I don't know why that's happened to me a couple times, but I love how it just clicks. It does. How do you guys sort of when you're watching somebody read one thing, and then in your head you're like, you know what? Let's try him here, and then it just works.
It's sort of case by case. You kind of, you never really know. And it's sometimes someone will have a certain vibe in an audition that'll speak just as well or better to a different part. I mean, it sort of depends on the actor, but it happens all the time. It happens a lot.
And this was a fun one because it did draw a lot of interest from people who would normally be the bigger series regulars roles, and so it was kind of fun to be able to put some of those ladies and men in roles that normally they actually wouldn't have done, probably.
So as we all got lucky with Kristen and Laura, anchoring the cast because that, I think it's fair to say, raised the bar immediately for other actors who, as Kerry said, might not normally.
Yeah, I don't
even
think
do a television show.
Julia Duffy and Mindy Cohn would not have been these supporting roles normally, but and then they just shine in them. I mean, they bring so much to each of those characters that, wasn't necessarily there on the page. Yeah. So
What was the hardest role to cast?
Hmm.
probably Ricky's role because it was so all over the place initially. And then once we got Ricky, obviously it was easy to cast because he said yes. But they were all pretty clear cut. And it's weird though, because I'd worked with Tate and but we had worked with Tate on and Abe on Filthy Rich. And those were all live auditions with input from Tate in the room and and so it's
Right,
weird.
that was in the before times, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so now it's a different story because we're dealing with, self-tapes and, what Paul and I know about somebody's body of work. And so we're sometimes having to have a bigger discussion about why we think somebody's right for a role that they may not be quite as aware of as, career-wise. So it's been fun. But it has been, a challenge to um past stuff from tapes. So um uh it's a different world that we've all gotten used to, you know, obviously.
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, I like self tapes a lot because I have two kids and I don't have to drive anywhere and and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
I wish they would, and I know SAG has that thing now where you can request the Zoom auditions, but it makes things easier, but yet harder because I feel like sometimes I do like a self tape like 100 times and then
Uh-huh.
like, oh, I'm okay. Let's just send this one out.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
You eventually have to sign on for it, and just let it go. Because I have a friend who was a photorealist painter that worked in with pointillism, and his gallery owner would just take his painting from his studio. It's like he never finishes. I'm just taking wet paintings to the studio, you know.
That's a good
I mean,
tip.
I understand from actor's point of view for sure, because you do miss, and from our perspective, in the sort of, this is not exclusive to Palm Royale, obviously, but like in the job interview part of the audition process, you do lose, at least in the initial reading, like just getting, if you don't know the actor yet,
Yeah.
just saying hello and seeing what they're like and what their personality is like, because that's, I think a lot of actors underestimate the sort of HR aspect of our jobs, which is,
Yeah.
we're sending you a whole human, not just the actor. So we want to make sure that you're
And a lot of
nice and that you're
yeah.
going to be on time and all that.
A lot too is I mean, we had cast Dominic Burgess in Ma for with Tate. And I had seen him, Eliza Johnson had directed a few episodes of Feud, the original Feud about Betty Davison.
Mhm.
And so I had seen him in that because Liza is somebody we work with. And so I introduced him to Tate when we were doing Ma, and then Tate cast him in Breaking News in Yuba County and now in this.
Mhm.
And James Urbaniak, Paul and I have known forever, and he's the man that runs the country club,
Club.
and doesn't have a lot to do, but he's just so present when he's there, you know. And then Aquila Zoll, who plays the Prince of Luxembourg, supposedly plays his sister, is somebody that we had cast in a really big role in Filthy Rich. And so we called her and said, "Do you want to do us a favor and have some fun?" And she's like, "Yep." So, because I think she has like 3 or 4 scenes with just 2-word lines or something. So,
Well, when I love watching shows that are like set in different periods of time. Do you guys sometimes have difficulty finding the actors who can fit into that sort of era, different eras?
I mean, with this age group, I think not such a difficult thing. I think with younger kids that have been, on cell phones their entire lives, and God love them, but they have a different outlook on what the world is, I think, and this world is very social and disconnected and at the same time immediate, but disconnected because you can't be talking to someone all the time on your cell phone.
I think
So,
there's also, not to get too technical, but I'm assuming actors read this or will see this. And I think I was just saying to my wife this the other day that I was doing something, um, we were auditioning something that had a flashback. It took place in the 50s, and this show took place in the 60s, obviously. And took me 3 or 4 years to realize that there was no uptalk in the 50s and 60s until a lot of younger actors have fallen into that tick, not through any, just because of generationally. And
What are you
I
saying?
really hear it now. Exactly. We're going to go to the country club.
Right.
So it's one of those things that sticks out at me now, because it's not right or wrong. It may be a pet peeve of mine, but in period pieces, it can be. It didn't hit me until I heard it in the wrong place.
Yeah.
I want to talk about casting Josh Lucas. I've talked to him a couple times, and he's just the nicest guy. How did you find him? Because his character's like just kind of a mess, like Clueless. How did you find him? He was just wonderful.
I mean, I've been working with Josh for 30 years. Back in New York, when I first started working on independent films there, we cast Josh in a little film that never came out. And I've forgotten the name of it. It was about farmers in Pennsylvania. And it was before you were with us, Paul. And then he's one of the bros in Mary Herron's American Psycho.
Right.
So we've known Josh forever. And then when they were saying, the 1940s, 50s, Paul Newman
Dashing.
dashing. It's like, that's Josh, and he has those Paul Newman beautiful blue eyes, and so he read the script and was interested, and so Josh Tate drove up to his place in Topanga, and they had dinner and probably a few drinks, and Josh signed on, and he's just exactly what this part is.
He looks like those posters of dashing airline pilots from the late 60s.
He should have a scarf,
sideburns and everything.
Right. Yeah. Get back to self-tapes. So, like, when you're watching these self-tapes, what do you see is always wrong? And you're like, oh my God, I wish people would stop doing this.
I think people have gotten pretty good at it. I mean, when we first started getting self-tapes, as opposed to just FaceTime auditions, which we'd done for 10 years before COVID started, I think it's just sound and lighting that were kind of, not so great initially. And then a lot of people would shoot in their kitchen and have, distracting things in the background. So if you're focusing on something other than the acting, it's not good.
Yeah, there's not really one sort of. I think at this point, to Kerry's point, like, everyone's so used to it. I think that it's kind of leveled out in terms of everyone kind of knows how to do it, and there was much more. I don't want to say people are unforgiving now, but there was a lot more forgiveness in the early stages of, like, your room behind you was messy, or there was a pile of laundry or whatever. And I think everyone's gotten pretty savvy about playing backgrounds and head and shoulders shots and that sort of stuff. I think one thing that happened, we were seeing a lot of advantages being taken unnecessarily, in my opinion, about, like, people miking themselves or getting really good wardrobe or getting in. If the scene took place in a car, they'd go out to their car, they'd film it there, and then they'd edit it. And honestly, you're either good or you're not. That stuff doesn't really make a difference. It can look better, but it doesn't. We've never heard directors say.
Yeah.
We never heard directors say, "Oh, that guy was not great, but he was in his car and was wearing a suit.
Let's
call him back." So I think that's gone away too. I think people have sort of just gotten used to, like, the frames that we're all in now as being perfectly fine.
I want to ask you real quick about demo reels. Are you guys still watching those, or, like, are you doing more like specific clips of kind of character type you're looking for?
The thing I've been noticing is that people have, like, put their demo reels into different categories. So I'll see my drama reel, and then my comedy reel, and then my commercial reel, and it's fun to see different kind of aspects of an actor, So I like.
And if you're starting out, it's I don't know, honestly, the sort of moral or legal aspects of this, but a lot of reps and actors will share self-tapes from other projects, which, if you don't have a ton of experience, you don't have a ton of, on your reel yet, those are hit and miss in terms of how helpful they are, but it's better than nothing. In my opinion, there's nothing better than to see you on a set, even if it's a student film set or a short or something, just so we can see, a real piece of work, for lack of a better word.
this one kid sent in a monologue and he was really good. And it's like, and I'm watching the monologue for about a minute or so. And then I thought, this sounds so familiar. And then as I got through the monologue, it's like, oh, this is Anthony Perkins in Psycho.
Oh,
But he wasn't trying to do Anthony Perkins. He was doing his own version of Norman Bates. And it was like, this kid's a really good actor.
and that's a ballsy move too, to do
You
that.
know,
Yeah, that's
Huh?
you better be really good if you're gonna make
yeah,
that
it's
move.
dangerous. It's dangerous.
Right.
Do something that iconic, but
Right.
he made it his own. So yeah.
Hey guys, that is my time. Thank you again for
Oh, great. Thank you.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it.